Hi everyone, and welcome again on All Hands on Deck with Antoinette Wells. Antoinette is a specialist therapist in codependency and addiction, among other of her talents. And I'm really pleased to invite her today to talk about codependency. Hello, Antoinette.
Hello, Virginie. Nice to meet you again online, but we can communicate well, absolutely. So yes, codependency is a big subject. It's vast because it touches a lot of topics and also different relationships. But already in the definition, codependent, you can already grasp that it's going to be self-defining, like you are dependent or something with co. Co is cum from the Latin cum, and dependency is you know what dependency means, of course. And so codependent meaning you are depending on a person or on a situation can be also, but it's very much used with relationships, kind of man and women relationship, or other relationships as well, of course, with children, with mother and children, or other relationships as well. We can extend that to all relationships if it happens, and also with families. A codependent family is going to display a lot of dysfunction, and every member of this family will have different roles. First, I want to say that this kind of codependency happens mainly in a setting of addiction, but it can also happen when there is a member of the family who is not well, who has an illness like cancer, etc. And then the family kind of changes because of this person. You see what I mean? So it's an illness, an emotional illness.
Okay,
Yes.
Antoinette. So tell me,
Yeah.
codependency happens when we seek in others what we lack within ourselves. So we
Well,
go.
that's one thing. Yeah, that's one thing. So, for instance, between a man and a woman, is relying too much on somebody to fulfill their needs, or pleasing somebody too much. So you go too much out of yourself, basically. It's also because maybe, like we talked about before, with the self-esteem, because your self-esteem is not strong enough. So you are going to be hooked by a person. And then it goes also in this kind of, it can go also in this kind of romantic love addiction, love, and that's a big subject, which is something in itself. Um, but some characteristic of codependency is that, for instance, with a couple, the relationship starts and becomes very intense very fast, and so very intense. One of the characteristics is really the intensity.
Yes,
But
and
for instance, they will have some arguments, incredible arguments, uh, and sometimes they will say, "But how did we start this argument?" It escalates, and then the subject itself was not something incredibly significant, so it gets out of hand, basically.
But Antoinette, having excessive emotional or psychological reliance on another person only leads to failed expectation and disappointment. Instead, we should introspect or feel the existing void within us.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But for instance, when there's somebody in a family who is in active addiction, the family is going to rally around that person and are going to try to help that young person, for instance. but the way they help is actually not helpful, because they think they help, for instance, by going and paying the guy who gives the drugs to their son, so that he is not in trouble, or they go and rescue him if he was caught outside, kind of
Yes.
completely drunk, etc.,
Okay.
and has to spend a night in the prison. That's extreme cases. But I knew, as in a group I had once, a father who told in the group, I used to go every time my son was getting drunk and doing mischief. I used to go and rescue him in the prison. And of course he would continue, because there was no consequences of his behavior.
Yes.
So that's one thing, is that if you are codependent, you don't see that you need to let the other person face the consequences of their behavior.
Yes. But
And
either
just
you or your partner or both are often anxious and worried that the relationship will break up, or you want to always rescue your partner to have less problem over and over again. So it's not healthy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is absolutely one characteristic as well of codependency, that you want to rescue people. And again, by doing that, you don't allow them to solve their own problems. You see, that's a big point. You don't allow them to find their own solutions.
So Antoinette, what would be your advice for people being in codependency? Should we introspect ourselves, and what would be the tools that you propose in your private session to
sometimes it depends of the degree, but sometimes it's really having counseling. But there's also the 12-step program, which I mentioned before, which has groups for codependent anonymous, which is great.
Yes.
It's free, and it's a group therapy, which is confidential, and people share their problems, and then they realize that other people have the same situation or the same kind of problems, and then together they can find a way to, they are mirrored to themselves, and they find a way to get out of it.
Absolutely.
Gradually.
So
it's not from one day to the other.
Yes.
Sorry?
I got you. So a relationship can only work when two wholes come together, not two halves that hope to find in the other what they don't possess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yes. Yeah, they have to be confident in their own personality, in their own self, and then they can give and take. For instance, in codependent relationship, there's an imbalance between the giving and the taking. Either one gives too much, and the other one takes too much, and vice versa. It's a kind of dance, kind of, and they pursue each other, kind of thing. See what
I understand, and I like it, Antoinette. My question is, sometimes we say that we are attracted to, in relationship, to a figure that is familiar to us. Can you develop this point from a therapist point of view?
Well, sometimes yes, we want to find characteristic in the person of our choice that we have seen in figures in our childhood, and sometimes they can be good, and sometimes they can be dysfunctional as well. You see, for instance, if you had a father who was larger than life and maybe sometimes quite aggressive or really loud, you might either not find somebody like that at all, or really find that kind of person again to have a connection with.
Ah, okay, I see.
You know?
Yes, yes.
So and yeah, you might be able to see that actually it doesn't work out for you, because it has to, you have to find a balance.
So once again, Antoinette, if I understand, the lack we have at a very young age, between 3 and 7, as you said in the previous interview, this lack, we have to sort it out before we go into a long-term relationship, because otherwise we will keep that pattern, as you said, and attracting always the same person and the same failures.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely.
Where you come into the picture, because I think nowadays the young generation is very alert, but they just need a guidance of a therapist who can, you know, help them to go straight and not waste time with those codependency that are due to their lack of self-love, self-respect, the fact that they were not heard when they were small, etc. So it's very a crucial step to take in consideration at a young age.
Absolutely. And exactly, you see, when you talked, I just had this image of, for instance, a woman, a mother, smothering her son. And if the son will try to unconsciously to find a wife who does the same to him, you see what I mean? Will kind of dominate or make it too close, or he's not going to have the right image.
It reminds me,
a wife, you know?
It reminds me that sometimes we say, yeah, always look how your partner is treating his mother, because it will be the way he will be treating you. So
also, yes, absolutely. So there are mirrors, you see, and it's very important to identify. There will always be kind of a reference point to people from your past when you were growing up.
Yes.
But becoming yourself is absolutely about detaching and then seeing what is the reality of it, and what you want, that if you want this, or you want something different, or something more balanced, etc. This is really about becoming yourself without depending on an image of the past, for instance.
So once again, it's a self-respect and a self-love that we need to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is very interesting. Now, I wanted just to briefly talk about the family, because it's very interesting. When there is a problem person in the family, I said the different members take different roles. For instance, they take the role of the rebel, of the rescuer, of the scapegoat. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so they all take different roles. So the rebel I don't want nothing to do with this family. I have enough, and he's going to do his own thing, but he's going to be very rigid with his boundaries, etc. The rescuer is going to be the codependent completely, and that's very often the role of the mother. And then the scapegoat is the one, poor little one, who is going to be very much, oh, you do everything wrong, what is the matter with you, etc., by all the other members of the family. They are going to go on him or on her to offload their frustrations. That's a scapegoat. You see what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's an image of dysfunction of a codependent family. And it's much more common than we think.
Absolutely.
It's quite, I mean, obviously, we encounter that in therapy. There are also very healthy families, but I mean, they are not the majority, you know, especially nowadays, I think. So, yes.
Antoinette, we talk about codependency.
Yeah.
How shall we shift to a co-creator of our destiny?
Co-creator.
Require, coming from a therapist, to become a co-creator, not codependent, but co-creator of our destiny. It means that we self-introspect and change our expectation on ourselves and not on others.
Well, I think for that, again, therapy is very good, either group therapy or kind of one-to-one therapy. Or sometimes people through their lives and their profession, or through even friends, etc., find their ways to become more themselves, and they have an inner strength that can manifest, and then they can actually, it's very interesting. You can see some people, they really have an inner strength, and against all odds, they can really become themselves in the way that they are creative, and they create their destiny themselves.
Absolutely.
But I think this is very much part of self-realization, you know, realizing yourself. I mean, Jung talked a lot about it, about at the end of his life, about individuation, which is really, I mean, he was definitely somebody who achieved his own self. I'm talking about a therapist here, of course, you know, about a psychiatrist who was a great philosopher also. But this is going through a lot of experience. It's also your attitude in face of life when you have experiences. Sometimes they are tough experiences to go through. But if your attitude towards them is to find something which could be positive for you, for your growth, for your own evolution, then you are going to gain out of it, even if it is challenging experiences.
Yes.
Very interestingly, we were watching with my daughter the other day a program about a man, a therapist actually in America, who had very tragically lost his wife, who was very depressed and committed suicide, throwing herself from the 20th floor of a building in New York. And he had 3 children left with him. And this man managed to absolutely rebuild himself and his strength by making his body not extremely, but very strong. So for instance, I mean, I'm not going to go in big details, but he used ice and water, swimming in icy cold water to master his body. And then apparently when you use very cold water, it makes your body alkaline, you know, so it kind of eliminate the pain in your body. I mean, it's his own theory, but he was actually showing some example with some of his patients, and it was very interesting. Some people had panic attacks, and they managed to go over their panic attacks
with the treatment of cold and icing water.
Yeah, well, that's very just an example.
How the body reflects on our emotion, and sometimes we don't look at it, but it shows. And we can also, as you said just now, we can recover pain and emotion and things that have been stuck in our body through, you know, hitting this body and releasing the pain.
Well, yeah, that's an example. But you can also do it through meditation. With a balanced meditation, you can also restore yourself.
Absolutely. You know, I had a talk with a friend of mine the other day, and she was telling me, you know, Virginie, now I'm on the 4th relationship, and always I attract the same men and the same thing. But I told her, you know, I think when you know who you are, first of all, the first question you should ask to your partner is, do you meditate? Do you introspect? Do you like self improvement within yourself? I think it's really something that it's a topic to discuss, because at the end, as you said, when we arrive at a certain time in our life, we find so much within us with the spirituality, whatever we practice. It can be yoga, it can be healing therapy, it can be different things. So I think this is an aspect that you said just previously. Spirituality also help to become more aligned with who you are, more authentic, and automatically you attract then the energy, the frequency in the other who is at the same level as you.
Absolutely, that's absolutely right. And also by meditation, you really endeavor to reach the self, not only yourself, but the spirit in yourself. You know, so this is of course another topic, but definitely, if you have a connection with yourself, which is genuine, authentic, and then a spiritual relationship with a higher power, for instance. Actually, the 12-step program is based on that. You know, it's about relinquishing the power that addiction had over one person, and then giving this power to a higher power. You know, that's the third step. The first step is recognizing that you are powerless over such and such addiction, and that your life has become unmanageable. Second step is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves or yourself can restore us to sanity. Step 3 is made a decision, a conscious decision to turn your life and your will to this power as you understand this power. And this is, of course, extremely well formulated because it leaves a scope to a very wide, higher power. It's not linked to any religion. You know, it's really about discovering spirituality. Yeah. So then, of course, with this higher power, you start to have a better relationship with yourself, because there's also introspection with the 4th step. But I don't want to go too much in it because we don't have that much time just now. But the 4 steps is about made a moral inventory of our shortcomings. So, you know, it's about introspection.
Fantastic.
Yes, the 4th step.
Yeah,
so it's fascinating.
I want to develop with you on the next interview about the 12th step, because I think it's really a technique, once again, that we need from a therapist like you to help us see and become better, aligned, and more ourselves. But Antoinette, just to conclude this codependency topic, many times we say, you know, I want to grow old with my partner, but I think nowadays more and more we want a relationship that entail wanted to grow with somebody, not to grow old with the person. Am I right?
Ah, that's a very nice kind of jeu de phrase, I would say. Yes. I think to grow along somebody is the best way, rather than to grow old with somebody, which is, I mean, it's very sweet to old people together sometimes. They're very sweet if they have managed to go over all the obstacles of life together. But to grow along somebody, meaning that the 2 people, like I gave this image the other day to you about the Khalil Gibran, the 2 trees, which are growing with their root, with a nice distance, you know, with a 2 meter, like the COVID thing, you know, separate COVID, 2 meters distance so that the trees can grow.
Absolutely, yes.
And then they can have their roots properly established. They have enough space. So very important for people to have enough space between themselves to be able to grow and then to be creative, you know, with themselves and with their relationships.
Very nice. Very nice, Antoinette. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain us few tools how to overcome codependency, which is really something happening nowadays a lot, where we look for the happiness externally instead of introspecting. So thank you so much, Antoinette, and to all of you listeners, thank you for being part of our weekly topics. More to come with our specialist therapist. And Antoinette, once again, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Virginie. Okay, a pleasure. Really interesting topic. I mean, we just touched the surface of it. You know, we give it a taster. I mean, it's a very vast subject, but it's very, very prevalent. Yeah.
And of course, to all of you listeners, the therapists that are invited on the platform are therapists that I have experienced personally on a private session. And I really invite all of you to look at our coming website where you can connect with them and start your beautiful journey. Thank you to all of you. Please share the platform with your loved one and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.